Okay, so here we go. I've been working on this skeleton warrior. This is again kind of following this series of illustrations for a game design I've been working on, a tabletop card and dice fantasy game. And I've been drawing these characters and monsters, and I'm just finishing up the skeleton warrior line art here, and then we'll jump into coloring. I'm using paint.net. One of the things that I wanted to do with this project is to use only open source and free software for the entire project. Just really as a personal challenge to kind of push myself and push the envelope of what some may think these programs are capable of. And really just to see if I can do it. So if you have any questions about paint.net during this stream, let me know. I wouldn't consider it an alternative to Photoshop unless this is kind of all you're doing with it. I've seen some really cool stuff people make with it, but for me it's just a very, very simple drawing program that supports layers. And there are some features like this line tool here that I'm using that are really, really handy. Sometimes I just can't pull a line the way that I want. Usually it's because of the angle. Doing it on a Wacom tablet. I got angle that I'm just not used to. Sometimes it's hard. But I did the sketch. You see these kind of light blue lines underneath here that I'm kind of using as a guide and going over. That was all drawn in right here inside paint.net on just a separate layer. And I just realized that all of this ink was done on the wrong layer. So what we're going to do is copy it. Copy. Paste. Okay. It's all this chainmail here, so let's grab that. I guess that's fine. We'll just paint over it. Okay, so I just kind of had to fix something there, but back to the pen here. Okay. And we'll just finish up some of these little details. Okay, I think that's good. I'll use the curve tool here again, just to give a line right down the middle of this blade. Just like that. Okay, and I believe that should finish the line art. So we hide our sketch. I'll get a little bit of chainmail here to finish. We'll do that quickly. There we go, looks good. All right, so I'm gonna get rid of the sketch layer here. Okay, and then I'm gonna change my flood fill mode to contiguous. Make sure I'm on my ink layer. And select everything around the character. Make sure I get these inside pieces too. That should be everything. A couple of small pieces right in here where you can see between the bones, and right here. There we go. I'll invert the selection with Control I. So now I have just the character here selected, and I'll do Control Shift and X, which will crop it, the entire canvas, to that selection, including all of the layers. So now I have this solid white layer here now. And in fact, let me just go ahead and make sure it is completely solid white. I saw some black in there. There we go. Control Shift X. And I'll rename this bottom layer color. And this will act as a just a way to contain all of the coloring right inside the lines in a very simple way. All right, so now I'm going to open up my colors here, and we'll find a good color for kind of a good base color, which I think we're going to go with a gray, and I'm just going to add a little bit of red. Okay, and we'll just use this to fill it, the entire thing in. I like that. Okay, and I've got a couple colors already down here ready to go for other bits of it. So chainmail. See, basically the way that I do this is to separate all of the different elements, different colors, by basically just using a brush to kind of cut through, just with a line sort of outlining those different pieces. So there's the chainmail there, and I'm just creating an outline, kind of following the line work there. And because I have that selection there in the background, those marching ants still containing everything that I'm doing to a selection, I don't have to get really precise, especially on the edges. So as long as I go around the selection, if there's anything that kind of goes off the edge, like here for example, I can just go right off the edge. It doesn't look like I'm doing very much because I'm going in the black area. And let me hide the ink so you can see that's what I did. And then I change to the fill bucket tool and fill in that area. So it makes it very quick to color the entire piece this way. Smaller areas I might just use the brush to fill in. So do all the metal in this color. You can hold down spacebar and pan around just like you can in Photoshop. There we go. And I've got a color here for leather. See, I missed a piece of metal, so K on the keyboard can sample colors. And I have it set up so that it will automatically just switch right back to the last tool I was using, so it makes it really easy to pick up colors. Okay, we'll zoom out. This I want to be kind of like cloth, so that's not going to be leather. This is going to be bits of leather here. So let's get some of these like sort of decaying boots. Bits of scrap that might have been left over. And we'll do the one on this side. I really let the way that I do the line work with very heavy blacks do a lot of the work for me. So even just with these flat colors, there's a lot of sort of implied shading with the solid black shadows. And I'll use that when we do the shadow or shading layer. Okay, some of this cloth, I think I'm going to make it sort of like a light yellow. And there's a lot of different ways. I used to use the lasso selection tool to kind of do this kind of stuff, but I realized it wasn't really any faster, because essentially this is what you do with the lasso selection tool, is make these cuts. And might as well do it with a brush and then just fill it in with color. Less tools you have to use, less switching back and forth, less keyboard strokes, at least for me anyway. And if I'm on a brush and need to fix something, it's a lot faster to just do it. Alright, the scabbard here, I'm debating whether to make that leather or a different color. I might make it blue, like a dark blue. I'll zoom in on here. Okay, and then I'm just going to go in here and check, make sure everything's filled in correctly. Looks good. All right, so what I do now is create a new layer. Okay. Make sure I have my subject still selected. I'm going to rename this layer shading. I'm going to change it to multiply and make my opacity 120. Click OK. All right, go back to my brush, and the way that I do this, one for a consistent mood for all these illustrations in this game, is to use a color on multiply mode for all of the shadows. And I do sort of a cell style shading, and I'm using a dark purple to give a, in my opinion, kind of a creepy tone to the shadows. And I'm doing this the same way. Oh, let me turn my fill mode back to contiguous. Doing this the same way I did the coloring, where I was filling in the flat areas by sort of outlining where I wanted the color to be filled in. And then switching to the fill bucket tool. Okay. This spine here, that's all going to be in shadow. There'll be a cast shadow there from the chainmail onto the rib cage. Underneath here. And here. This is a lot like how I would color with markers or watercolor. I just like that it's very clean, even though, I mean, by clean what I mean is the lack of artifacts or paper texture, grain, smudges, scan lines, you know, any of that, just by doing it all digitally like this, but sort of simulating the way that I would do it traditionally on paper. I've been able to fairly successfully, I'm pretty happy with the results, kind of achieve something that still, it feels like, you know, anytime I draw something, I want it to feel like me and my style. And in fact, this has actually helped me sort of kind of focus on that a little bit more, because I'm not in a really sophisticated high-end piece of software. I don't know, there's just like a different attitude when I'm working in Photoshop, like I have to be doing professional work because it's like a professional product, and that may be good, it might sound good, but sometimes it means it's less creative, it's safer, I don't experiment as much. I don't know, I just kind of approach it with a different attitude. Maybe other people don't have that issue at all, but for me, this feels a little bit more like drawing. I guess rather than doing work. It may be because it's a project that it's you know, completely a personal project. I'm doing this entirely for myself, but you know, this, I set the criteria for myself, and I didn't have to. I could have used any software I wanted, but I like that. I want to put that kind of whole side of his head in shadow. But I think part of it too, I also like, I've seen some amazing stuff made with that should be a shadow right here, with paint.net and Krita, which is definitely something you guys should check out if you're interested in art and doing digital art on the computer. Krita is amazing. I think it actually has a better brush engine than Photoshop. The transform controls and sort of manipulation of graphics maybe isn't as good, but for painting, digital painting, it would definitely be my preference. This particular style of illustration, the point of it is not to be photorealistic, but to give an impression, sort of a characterization. It's very stylized, sort of comic book-esque. In fact, Mike Mignola is a big influence for me for this particular style of illustration. I've always used a lot of heavy black and line work, and sort of stumbled across his art with the Hellboy comics later in life, and just fell in love with it. It's very simple, but it's sort of hard to achieve. So I just really like how, say, that purple affects the colors in a different way, and it would not be the same if I was just using black or darker versions of these colors. I also don't have to go in and you know, change my colors and be mixing colors all the time. As I zoom out here, you can see that this whole thing just has kind of a tone, a feel to it, and it's starting to feel more dimensional. I'll use that curve tool again and just draw a curve right there so that I can fill in this bottom part. Just like that. A couple of angled shadows just like that to kind of give the illusion of a shine to that metal. It's a very sort of animator thing to do. Now this chainmail, I'm just gonna kind of go in and sort of like I would do with watercolor or marker, I'm just trying to get an impression of that texture, not draw every single link in the chainmail. And so I'm just adding a bit of shadow where I think it makes sense. There we go. Alright, so that's all of the shadows. I'll do another layer. Keep my selection selected there. I'm going to double click on it, rename it Highlights. And we'll change the blending mode to Screen, and again make the opacity 120. And for this, do it the same exact way as I did the shadows, but this time I use a warm color. I like to use this light yellow. And again, we'll draw in our highlights. And we can even use this on the opposite side where more of the shadow is to kind of give some rim light or bounce light. Because this is going to be for a playing card, what want to make sure there's a little bit of a exaggeration on details. See how that yellow affects that leather color there. It's much more warm, and that's what I want. I want the warm colors to pop out towards you. The shadows to be cool so they fall into the recesses. And it just kind of gives a very interesting, and I think a very pleasing effect when you have complementary colors. Yellow and purple are complementary colors. And using purple for the shadows and a very subtle yellow hue to the highlights creates a bit of a color harmony. You can see I'm a little bit more sparse with the highlights. I don't want this highlight color to sort of take over. I just want it to, on some of these it's just a touch on the edges. That's all it needs, is just a little definition there. Okay, and I'm trying to be mindful of my light source. So most of the highlights are going to fall on the top ridge of things and more to the right, because I've already kind of established that's where the light is coming from. And then of course all these different pieces and elements overlap each other and create shadow. On top of each other. See how I can hit the edge? I can just hit the edge of some of these things, especially the more rigid elements, and just really pop them out. I don't like it there. Okay. Move over to this side. It's always exciting to me to see just, I mean, there's 4 layers in here. One for the base colors, one for the shadows, one for the highlights, and then the line work on top. And how basically these are essentially solid blocks of color laid on top of each other with very really very little effort. You know, that it takes a bit to sort of set it all up. The line work really takes the longest, and then the coloring after that. But just has so much character, and it then becomes a recognizable thing, you know, to the brain. This is a little trick. When you have like a nick or a dent, if you put a highlight underneath like a dark area, see how it creates that illusion of almost like a cut, like a divot. Really easy to do. So you can see when I'm zoomed in like this is essentially just a mono line illustration. Just with a round brush, use an 8-pixel brush. And I'm at 350 DPI though, on an 8.5 by 11 canvas. And these will end up being on a 3 by 5 size card. So I'm going to get a lot more detail out of this illustration on a smaller size. I think that's it. Maybe just add a few more highlights here in the chainmail. Okay, I'll save that. And then I'm going to go ahead and save this as a PNG. And now you can just see how much detail there's going to be in this very high resolution file. Now Paint.net files will save all of your layers, but once you save it as a PNG, it flattens it. So make sure you don't save over your Paint.net file. All right, so here is the PNG. And let's go ahead and pull it into Google Slides, because that's what I'm using for my layout program. Laying out all the cards in Google Slides. So here's my card file. These are 3x5 size. This whole idea actually started before I started doing the artwork for it. I just got a pack of 3x5 cards from the dollar store, and just wrote on them the names and stats and stuff for the creatures, and then began slowly illustrating all the cards. So I'm actually going to switch to my mouse because it's a little bit easier for this kind of task. Okay, I'll just drag and drop my high resolution PNG in here, and now you can see how much detail that we actually put in there compared to the size that they're going to be. So I've got a duplicate here for the goblins. I'm going to just ungroup it, and we'll just move this little goblin off to the side. Continue shrinking down our skeleton. Move him into place. And we can rename this. And there's our skeleton. Actually, the skeleton I think has 5 hit points and 1 treasure. So once I set up this template for myself in Google Slides, it really made it easy to pull in new cards like this and create new ones very quickly. So now I've got a goblin, skeleton, and a wolf all done. And for my characters, I've finished the barbarian, the rogue, the cleric, and the ranger. So I'm going to swap these out. I've got a paladin, I've got a warlock, I've got a wizard, and a druid. So I've still got a lot of work to do, but the illustrations are coming along. I've been playtesting the game. I think it's a lot of fun. Still tweaking some of the mechanics and some of the rules, and yeah, thank you guys for watching this like art process of illustrating this skeleton. There he is. Might pull him down just a little bit. So Yeah, I liked him where he was. Well, thank you guys for watching. Bye for now.